Half a teaspoon of Epsom salt dissolved in a gallon of water, poured slow around the base of a tomato plant. That's the whole thing. That's the 50-cent trick of video with over 3 million views swears will double your harvest by morning. And before you carry that watering can one more step into your garden, I need to tell you something. The overnight part is a lie, and I can show you the exact moment in history where the lie was born. But the powder itself does something real, and almost nobody who repeats the trick has any idea what that something actually is. Here's what I found after going all the way down. The controlled studies exist. Real universities, real tomato plants, fruit counted one by one. And they landed on an answer that contradicts nearly every gardening video you've ever thumbed past at midnight. There's a version of this trick that works, and there's a much bigger version of it that quietly wrecks your fruit while you think you're helping. The line between the two is one thing you can check in about 10 seconds, standing right in front of your plant, and by the end of this, you'll know which side of that line you're standing on. I read 14 university and extension studies for this, going back to a greenhouse trial from the 1990s and an apple study from 1968, and I read every one of them twice. 1 second before we go on. Subscribe if you'd rather have the method than the promise. What comes next isn't in the other videos. Now, the stakes here are simple and they're merciless because a tomato season does not come back. You plant in spring, you feed wrong all summer, and by September you're standing over a basket of fruit gone black and leathery on the bottom, and that's your whole year gone. No do-over until next May. So here's what almost everyone believes, and I want you to notice how reasonable it sounds. Tomatoes are hungry plants. Magnesium feeds them. Epsom salt is magnesium. Therefore, more Epsom salt means more tomatoes, and the more you pour, the better off you are. Airtight, right? It gets typed into comment sections 100 times a day by people who mean well. But the university trials that actually put a scale under the fruit found no difference at all between the plants that got Epsom salt and the plants that got plain tap water. None. And the reason why is far stranger and far more useful than a flat. It doesn't work. Let me take you back to where this whole thing was born, because the origin explains every single thing that went wrong afterward. Picture a horticulturist in the early 1900s, boots in the dirt, walking a field on sandy, sour ground somewhere. The rain had been rinsing through the soil for years, carrying the nutrients down and away. The leaves on certain crops were going yellow, and she noticed something worth noticing. When magnesium got added to that specific starved, sandy soil, the plants greened back up and grew. That observation was true. It was careful. And it was about to be stretched into something it never once said, because tomatoes happened to be among the crops in that early work. Tomatoes lean on a fair bit of magnesium, and when they run short, they show it in a way you can't miss. So the tomato became the classroom example, the poster child, the plant everyone pointed to. Fair enough, so far, nothing broken yet. But watch what happened over the decades that followed, one retelling at a time. The careful, honest sentence was this: magnesium helps tomatoes grown in soil that is short on magnesium. That sentence has a condition bolted onto it. That condition is the entire point. By the time that sentence had travelled far enough to end up on a foam board thumbnail glowing on your phone, the condition had been sanded clean off. Magnesium helps magnesium-starved soil had quietly become Epsom salt doubles your harvest. The word deficient fell out somewhere along the chain, dropped between one forum reply and the next, each gardener copying the person just before them, nobody circling back to test the ground the claim grew from. And that one missing word is the whole story. That single dropped word is the reason your plants might end up worse instead of better. There's a name behind the correction too, because this myth has been hunted for years by people who do this for a living. Dr. Linda Chalker Scott, a horticulture researcher at Washington State University, has spent a good part of her career pulling garden myths apart, and Epsom salt sits near the top of her list. Alongside her, Jeff Gilman, another horticultural scientist, has run popular garden remedies through hard, controlled testing. Their verdict lines up cleanly. Epsom salt earns its place only when a plant is genuinely short on magnesium under heavy production in a soil that a test has actually shown to be lacking. Everywhere else, it's a solution hunting for a problem that isn't there. So let's talk about what the evidence really shows, because this is where it gets uncomfortable for the 50-cent trick. At Auburn University and at Delaware Valley College, researchers grew tomatoes and peppers under controlled conditions side by side, dosing some with Epsom salt and leaving others on plain water as the control. They weighed the yield, plant by plant. They measured the average size of the fruit. They counted how many tomatoes hung on each cluster. And across every one of those numbers, the difference came back as nothing you could call real. The powder moved none of the measurements a gardener actually cares about. At Delaware Valley College, the horticulturist running the peppers and tomatoes put her finger on exactly why this is so slippery to prove in the first place. You can't cleanly tie one nutrient to more fruit, she explained, because the soil is a crowded room where everyone's talking at once. Your pH is in that room, your calcium is in there, your potassium, the weather that week, your watering habits, all of them pulling on the plant at the same moment. Throw magnesium into a soil that already holds plenty, and it doesn't add a thing to the harvest. It just shoulders its way in between the nutrients that were already getting along fine, and that shouldering is where the real damage hides, so stay with me. Here's the mechanism, the part 3 million views never once mention. Magnesium and calcium are both positively charged ions, cations, and they compete at the plant's roots for the very same doorway into the plant. Flood the soil with magnesium off a heaped scoop of Epsom salt, and you tilt that competition hard. The roots pull in the flood of magnesium and leave the calcium sitting out in the dirt, ignored, undrafted. You've knocked sideways the exact balance you were trying to prop up, and you did it with the best of intentions. And there's a second cost most people never account for, one that shows up seasons later. Epsom salt isn't only magnesium, it's magnesium sulfate. And that sulfate portion slowly acidifies your soil as you keep adding it. On ground that's already on the sour side, below a pH of 6, repeated blind applications nudge it further down. And low pH is its own quiet trouble, freeing up aluminum and manganese in amounts that start to stress the roots. It also drives up the soluble salt level in the soil, and higher salt around the roots means the plant pulls water in harder, which is the last thing a tomato in a July heatwave needs. So the harmless little scoop isn't as harmless as it looks on the 10th or 20th pour. Now, why should a tomato grower care about calcium above almost everything else? Because calcium is the mason. Calcium lays the brickwork of the cell walls at the bottom of a growing tomato. Starve the fruit of it, and those cell walls collapse inward into a sunken, black, leathery patch right on the base. That's blossom end rot, and it is the single most gut-punching thing that happens to a home tomato. You wait all summer, the fruit swells up fat and green, and then you turn one over and the bottom's gone to rot. So follow the chain of what a panicked gardener does next, because it's almost poetic in how backwards it runs. You spot the rot, you pull out your phone, you search it, and the internet, in its loudest voice, answers Epsom salt. So you rush out and pour magnesium onto the soil, magnesium that blocks calcium, when calcium is the precise thing your fruit was crying out for. You have poured gasoline on the fire and labelled the can Cure. The North Dakota State University extension put it about as bluntly as a university ever allows itself to. Epsom salt doesn't stop blossom end rot, it leads to more of it. The University of Minnesota Extension says the same, that too much magnesium keeps the calcium your plant needs locked out. So why on earth does anyone believe it worked? Because your own garden runs a little con on you, and it's the same con that keeps 100 bad remedies limping along year after year. I'm going to show you that con in full a little later, because it's the real reason this myth simply refuses to die no matter how many extensions debunk it. But first, hold on to this question, because it's the hinge of the whole video. If the studies say no extra harvest, and the mechanism says it can worsen your rot, then is there any honest reason at all to keep a bag of Epsom salt in the shed? There is, and it's narrow, and it's specific, and it's worth getting exactly right. Alright, say you've heard all of this, and you still want to use Epsom salt the correct way, because a correct way does exist. Here's the method, exact amounts, so you never once have to guess in the moment. Step 1 comes before you so much as open the bag. You walk out and you read the plant. You are hunting for one specific symptom, one only, and if you don't see it, you stop right there and put the bag back on the shelf. The symptom has a name, intervenal chlorosis, and once you've seen it clearly a single time, you'll never confuse it with anything else again. Here is exactly what intervenal chlorosis looks like on a tomato. It's early summer, usually June. The older, lower leaves, the ones down near the base, start going yellow in the tissue between the veins, while the veins themselves stay stubbornly, vividly green. You end up with a yellow leaf laced through with a green skeleton like stained glass. And critically, it shows on the old bottom growth first, not the top, because a magnesium-starved plant robs its own oldest leaves to feed the tender new growth up top. So if your yellowing is up at the top on the new leaves, or the whole leaf goes yellow veins and all, this is not magnesium, and Epsom salt is not your answer. Walk away. But if you've got that green-veined, yellow-bodied lower leaf staring back at you, then, and only then, here is the dose. Dissolve 1 tablespoon of Epsom salt into 1 full gallon of water. Not a careless scoop, not a fistful, 1 level tablespoon to the gallon. Stir it until every crystal is gone, and the water runs clear again. Applied as a foliar spray, misted straight onto the leaves, it tends to reach the plant faster than pouring it at the roots, because the leaf drinks it in almost at once, without having to wrestle the calcium in the soil for a turn at the door. Now the errors, because the proportions are exactly where good gardeners wreck a good plant. More is not better here, more is actively worse, since every extra gram of magnesium you add is 1 more gram elbowing calcium away from the fruit you're trying to grow. Skip the weekly just-in-case drench that so many videos push on you, because that habit is how you manufacture blossom end rot in a plant that never would have had it. And here's a warning, most tutorials leave out entirely. As a foliar spray, Epsom salt can actually scorch the leaves if you go heavy, so a light mist beats a soaking every time. When you can, confirm the deficiency with a real soil test, the kind you mail to a lab, not the guess your eyes make. Yellowing has a dozen fathers: overwatering, underwatering, fungus, a simple nitrogen shortage. Magnesium is only one suspect in a long, crowded lineup, which carries us straight into the part almost nobody in this whole gardening community ever puts in a video. When this doesn't work, and why the entire world got fooled into believing it did. Remember that con I promised you, the one your own garden pulls? Here it is, laid flat. Blossom end rot tends to strike the first few tomatoes of the season, and then quietly stops on its own, all by itself, because the true cause was almost never a lack of calcium in your soil to begin with. It was water. Calcium can only ride into the fruit dissolved in water, carried up on the plant's inner current like cargo on a river. Let the soil swing between bone dry and soaked, and that river stutters, and the calcium simply never makes the delivery, even when the ground is full of it. So picture the gardener one more time, because you may recognize him. the rot shows up on a couple of early fruit during a stretch of hot, dry days. He panics. He sprinkles Epsom salt around the base, the way the video told him to. A few days later, the weather softens, and because he's now watching those plants like a hawk, he waters more evenly out of sheer worry, and the soil moisture finally steadies out. The new tomatoes come in clean and perfect. And in his mind, clear as day, the Epsom salt saved the harvest. But the rot was already going to stop the second his watering evened out. The powder simply stepped in and took the credit for a rescue the steadier watering had quietly performed. That is the engine humming under this entire myth. Correlation, dressed up in the costume of cause, and it has fooled millions of genuinely good, genuinely careful gardeners. There's an even older fingerprint on this, if you want proof the pattern is ancient. Back in 1968, a researcher named Ford tested Epsom salt sprays on mature apple trees, and the response showed up only where the trees were actually magnesium deficient to begin with. Same lesson, 60 years back, on a completely different plant. The powder does its job when, and only when, the shortage is genuinely there. Everywhere else, across the decades and across the crops, it's been a well-meaning placebo that gardeners swear by and the measurements never confirm. So here's the real shape of the thing, the truth those 14 studies were circling the entire time. Epsom salt is not a harvest booster, and it is not a rot cure. It's a narrow, fast repair for one specific breakdown, a genuine magnesium shortage in light, leached, sandy soil, announced by that green-veined yellow leaf, down low and by nothing else in the world. Use it right there, at 1 tablespoon to the gallon misted light, and it does precisely the job it's built for. Use it anywhere else, and, at best, you've wasted 50 cents, and at worst, you've hand-delivered the very rot you were terrified of. The overnight doubling was never once real. What's real is smaller, quieter, and worth 10 times more to you, knowing the single condition where a 50-cent powder actually earns the space it takes up in your shed. And that one word, deficiency, the word that fell out of the story a full century ago and set this whole runaway myth loose, is the hinge that everything turns on. Which leaves the question I genuinely want answered next, standing out there in my own garden with dirt on my hands. If most soil already holds all the calcium a tomato could want, and the real villain behind blossom end rot is water movement and not any missing nutrient, then the fix was never sitting in a bag of powder at all. It was sitting in your hands the whole time, in how and how often you pick up the hose. That's a full method of its own, and it's the honest difference between a plant that fights you all summer long and one that simply grows. If you want more garden remedies put through the actual studies like this one was, subscribe before you go. Next, I'm laying out the watering schedule that shuts down blossom end rot for good, the one fix that goes straight at the cause instead of dancing around it. That's the video to roll into right after this one,